Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy visited the White House amid his country's brutal war with Russia. From the very moment he stepped out of the long black car at the White House gates, all eyes turned to him. Not because of what he was about to say, but because of what he was wearing. No suit, no tie, no shiny shoes. Instead, a military jacket, dark pants, and sturdy boots. The choice immediately drew attention and sparked mixed reactions. To many, it was a sign of informality, but to Zelenskyy, it was a powerful statement. He wasn't arriving as a politician. He was arriving as a soldier, representing a nation at war. President Zelenskyy's appearance in military attire, a combat jacket, dark trousers, and battlefield boots, took many U.S. officials by surprise, even leaving some displeased. While the press buzzed with questions about the message he was trying to send, inside the White House, American advisors and politicians exchanged uneasy glances. One person whispered, "He's not wearing a suit," as if it were a subtle insult to long-standing diplomatic tradition. Donald Trump, emerging from the far end of the hallway in a sharp suit, blue tie, and gleaming shoes, couldn't hide his discomfort. The first handshake was a power test firm, tense and brief. Then Trump remarked, "Nice outfit, very presidential." It sounded like a joke, but beneath it lay sarcasm, a subtle challenge. In the room filled with advisors and journalists, a few chuckled, others stayed silent. But Zelenskyy didn't. He held his gaze steady, his voice calm. "Mr. President, my country is at war." From that moment on, the meeting was no longer about ceremony or appearances. It became a clash of ideologies. Between a leader living in the reality of bombs and bloodshed and a former president who once shaped policy through the lens of commerce and negotiation. Trump fired off a series of pointed questions. How long is this war going to last? Can you actually win? How much money have we spent already? Meanwhile, Zelenskyy responded with calm determination. "We will fight until Ukraine is free." The conversation quickly moved beyond the bounds of protocol. It was no longer about clothing, no longer about who was right or wrong in how they chose to appear. It became about ideals, about survival, and about who truly understands what it means to fight for one's country. As diplomatic pleasantries gradually faded into the background, the conversation shifted to its core, the issue of aid. In a closed room, under cold fluorescent lights, and the scrutinizing eyes of advisors, the first question was posed not diplomatic, but purely pragmatic. Why should America keep spending billions of dollars on a war thousands of miles away? Trump leaned back in his chair, fingers tapping the table. His gaze locked on Zelenskyy, as if waiting for a convincing justification for the investment America had made in Ukraine. Zelenskyy didn't shy away. He hadn't come to beg, but to explain. His voice remained calm, yet every word carried the weight of bombs, of blood, and of belief. If we fall, Russia will not stop at Ukraine's borders. They will move on to Poland, to the Baltics, to the very edge of NATO. Those words weren't just a warning. They were the lived truth of a man in war. A man who had seen Russian tanks roll through quiet towns, heard cries echo from bomb shelters, and watched red flags rise over captured cities. Trump remained skeptical. He twirled a pen in his hand, speaking slowly. "Sounds dramatic, but Americans are tired. They're asking, what do we get from continuing to help Ukraine?" That was the moment the conversation crystallized. This wasn't a negotiation between allies. It was a calculation of cost versus value. Zelenskyy leaned forward. Americans gain stability. They gain a world where aggressors are not rewarded. They gain protection from an alliance system they helped build. Trump frowned. "You speak well, but I want to see results. I like winners." Zelenskyy replied curtly, "We're still fighting, because we have no other choice." The room fell silent for a moment. No one laughed, no one scoffed, because by now everyone understood. This was no longer a debate about numbers on a page. It was about the boundary of freedom and who is willing to pay the price to defend it. The hours-long meeting between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and U.S. President Donald Trump finally came to an end. There was no applause, no announcements of commitments, and no image of the two leaders standing side by side before the cameras, as many had expected. All that remained was a heavy atmosphere, cold stares exchanged among advisors, and a suffocating silence that hung over the room, once the very center of global power. On the south lawn of the White House, the microphones and podium stood ready. International reporters waited patiently. But then came the announcement. The joint press conference was canceled. No specific reason, no explanation, no statement on progress or agreement. The cameras captured only the image of an empty podium, where the two leaders were meant to address the world together. That absence echoed like a message. Inside, in the final moment of the meeting, Trump stood up first. He crossed his arms, his gaze no longer sharp but tinged with irony. Before leaving the room, he turned back and said, "Next time, wear a suit." His tone was gentle, but the message was clear. A reminder or a mockery. Zelenskyy didn't rush. He stood tall, his gaze unwavering, calm and composed. His reply was brief but firm. "Next time, remember who's actually doing the fighting." A heavy silence filled the room. White House advisors and staff looked up, then quickly lowered their eyes. Trump didn't respond. He turned away and walked down the gleaming hallway of the White House, leaving behind a meeting marked by deep disagreement. Zelenskyy walked out afterward. No statement, no joint photo, no final handshake. But perhaps he didn't need any of that. Because in the war Ukraine is facing, words are just the surface. It is the silence, the gaze, and the resolve that speak the loudest. Following the tense meeting at the White House, a wave of global reaction quickly surged. International media wasted no time reporting on the outcome. Headlines screamed across front pages: no joint statement, no historic handshake, silence instead of commitment. Meanwhile, social media erupted with videos, images, and divided commentary. One widely shared moment was Trump saying, "Next time, wear a suit," and Zelenskyy replying, "Next time, remember who's actually doing the fighting." That line quickly turned into a viral slogan printed on t-shirts, plastered on protest signs, and echoed in interviews around the world. Supporters of Zelenskyy praised him as a symbol of resilience and defiance. To them, he hadn't come to compromise, he came to stand firm. Ukraine wasn't asking for pity, it was demanding support for a just cause. In their eyes, the refusal to wear a suit wasn't a sign of disrespect. It was a message: war is not a diplomatic performance. Conversely, Trump supporters saw him as maintaining the composure of a true leader, someone who knows how to prioritize national interest above all else. They viewed his coldness, bluntness, and skepticism as marks of strength and the kind of pragmatism needed in global politics. In Ukraine, the reaction was complex. Some citizens worried whether the U.S. would continue providing weapons and financial aid. A looming question echoed, "Are we alone?" But when Zelenskyy returned to Kyiv, he did not retreat. In a televised address, he declared, "With or without aid, Ukraine will fight. Not because we want war, but because we have no other choice." That statement became a spark warming the spirit of a nation. While the world buzzed with commentary, Ukraine stood firm in the storm. The aftermath of the meeting between President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and former President Donald Trump didn't end with the closing doors of the White House. It continued to echo through commentary, news reports, and global political forums. When Trump posted a short but loaded message on social media, "Strong leaders make strong deals. Weak ones, well, they wear whatever they want," public reaction exploded. To Trump's supporters, it was a pointed reminder of strength, deal-making prowess, and strategic thinking. To others, it was a biting, tone-deaf jab, one that placed appearance above the brutal reality of war. From that point on, the story of the suit not worn was no longer just a minor detail in a political encounter. It became a symbol of two paths, two opposing philosophies. On one side stood Zelenskyy, representing those who fight to the end, choosing principle over image, standing firm amid fire and smoke. On the other was Trump, the embodiment of a pragmatic leadership style, where outcomes, money, and national interest take precedence. What seemed like a clash over clothing sparked deeper questions about leadership in times of war, about loyalty, and about how the world defines strength. Time has passed, but that moment is still recalled in debates, in editorials, in political science classrooms, even in history books. It serves as a reminder that sometimes what goes unsaid, like a suit not worn, leaves the deepest mark.